He saved a frail alien granny in the jungle, only to face her true form, a seductive demigoddess. One night with her would awaken powers no human was meant to hold, and a war no world could escape.
Captain Marcus Steele pushed deeper into the alien jungle of Proxima IV, every step a battle against the suffocating humidity and tangled undergrowth. His boots sank into damp soil that oozed up in clumps, while vines glittering with bioluminescence wrapped around his ankles like curious serpents. Above him, two suns bled their relentless light through the canopy, turning the air into a stifling steam bath. Sweat ran down his face, soaking the collar of his sand-colored uniform until it clung tightly to his muscular frame. He paused, lifting a gloved hand to wipe his brow, then muttered under his breath, "Goddamn Proximan heat. All this trouble for one flower." But not just any flower. The Proximan lotus, rarest of all flora cataloged on the colony world, and the only known cure for the venom now coursing through his friend Krell's alien veins. The outpost medic had given Krell less than 48 hours to live. Marcus had already burned through half that time navigating through this unforgiving wilderness. The lotus wasn't a legend, it existed recorded in old botanical archives, but finding it was another matter entirely. It bloomed only in scattered groves near the roots of ancient copper-bark trees, places so deep within the jungle, even drones struggled to survive. The database projected one such grove somewhere beyond the ridge he was climbing now. His tracker blinked with faint signals, teasing him forward. Marcus gritted his teeth, drew his combat knife, and hacked through a curtain of translucent vines that shimmered like spun glass. The strands snapped and curled back, releasing clouds of glittering spores that clung to his skin. He ignored the itch spreading across his forearms. There was no time to waste. As he pressed forward, the jungle seemed almost to close in on him, plants leaning roots, coiling shadows thickening. He'd fought in border wars, led squads into hostile fire, but something about this place pressed heavier on his nerves. It was as though the jungle itself was alive and watching. His breathing slowed. Training took over. Observe, measure, endure. He glanced at his wrist display, heart rate elevated, hydration, low location, uncertain. A soldier could survive hostile fire with grit, but the jungle consumed carelessness. He forced his mind back to Krell's face, the alien's gray-green skin turning ashen, his three-fingered hand gripping Marcus's arm in silent plea. Krell had saved Marcus's life twice during the Vaughn border skirmishes. There was no way in hell Marcus would let him die to some venomous jungle beast. The undergrowth suddenly thinned, giving way to a clearing bathed in strange light. At the center stood a tree, unlike any Marcus had seen, colossal, its bark gleaming like polished copper, its roots twisting in spirals, as if woven by intelligent design. Shards of golden sunlight slipped between its branches, illuminating patches of luminescent moss. And beneath it, kneeling with a wicker basket at her side, was an elderly woman. Marcus froze, blade still in hand. For a moment, he thought she was a hallucination conjured by heat stroke. A humanoid alien with radiant blue skin sat among the roots, her silvery white hair tied neatly at the back of her head. She was dressed in a simple linen garment, the color of sand worn thin at the edges. Her hands trembled as she tried to gather fallen copper-hued fruits into her basket. The scene felt surreal, fragile, like stepping into someone else's memory. Marcus lowered his knife and called out cautiously, his voice cutting across the hum of insects. "Need some help there, ma'am?" The woman startled, dropping the basket. Fruit scattered across the moss. She clutched at her chest, then exhaled in relief when she saw him. "Oh my, you frightened me, young man." Her voice was melodic with a strange lilting cadence, almost like music rising and falling on the humid air. Marcus sheathed his knife and approached slowly, hands visible. "Sorry about that. Didn't mean to sneak up on you. I'm Captain Marcus Steele, human outpost 15 clicks north." He crouched and began collecting the fallen fruits. "What are you doing out here alone? It's dangerous." The woman gave a gentle smile that deepened the faint lines at the corners of her luminous eyes. "My name is Alana. My home is not far from here. These Juru fruits are vital for medicine, and they fall from the mother tree only once each season." Marcus dropped a fruit into her basket, noting the way her hands shook when she tried to stand. He was at her side in an instant. "Are you hurt?" "Just these old bones protesting," Alana said with a soft sigh. "The journey grows longer every year." Her tone was resigned, but her eyes, bright, sharp blue, watched him with an intensity that unsettled him. Marcus made a snap decision. He had a mission, yes, but he wasn't about to leave someone this vulnerable to whatever prowled the jungle at night. "Let me help you back. I'm searching for a lotus plant nearby anyway. My friend's life depends on it." Alana studied him with a silence that stretched longer than comfort allowed. Then she nodded. Such kindness from a soldier. "Very well. My dwelling lies just beyond that ridge." They walked together, the basket of fruit cradled in Marcus's arm, while he supported her with the other. She was lighter than she looked, her frame delicate, her movements slower but steady when leaning against him. Conversation filled the climb. Alana asked about Earth, about oceans and skies, and the way humans built cities from stone and steel. She listened as though every word was a treasure. Marcus found himself speaking more openly than he expected, telling stories of his first spacewalk, of losing friends in border conflicts, of the way soldiers carried each other through hell. In return, Alana spoke of the jungle, how its plants whispered warnings, how roots carried memories, how every leaf contributed to the balance of the whole. "They remember those who harmed them," she said, trailing slender blue fingers along the fronds of a fern. "And they reward those who respect them." Marcus frowned, intrigued despite his urgency. "You make it sound like the jungle's alive." "It is," she replied with a mysterious smile. "Everything is alive. Some beings simply express it differently than others." The path grew steeper. Marcus bore more of her weight. Dusk was approaching, shadows stretching long beneath the copper canopy. By the time they crested the ridge, the jungle floor was already drowning in twilight. In a small clearing below, half hidden by vines, stood a modest hut. Constructed from native timber and roofed with flowering creepers, it looked like a piece of the jungle had decided to imitate human design. "This is your home?" Marcus asked, helping her to the doorway. "For many cycles now." Alana's voice carried both pride and something else, an old sadness. "Night falls quickly here, and with it come predators that even your soldier's knife cannot protect you from. Please come inside." Marcus hesitated. His mind tugged back to Krell lying in the outpost infirmary. Time was running out. He shook his head. "I appreciate the offer, but I can't. I need to find the lotus before." Alana's eyes caught his in the half-light. They seemed to sparkle, almost luminescent. "Perhaps I can help you with that," she said softly. "But for tonight you would be wiser to accept my shelter." Something in her tone, something beyond reason, compelled him to follow her into the hut. The interior of the hut was far larger than Marcus expected. From the outside, it looked like little more than a thatched shelter pressed into the hillside. Inside, however, the space opened up with surprising breadth. Bundles of dried plants dangled from the ceiling, beams, their shapes and scents mingling into a fragrance that was at once earthy, spicy, and strangely sweet. Clay pots lined the shelves, carved into the walls, each painted with faded runes that glowed faintly when his eyes lingered too long. The floor was covered with woven mats, their patterns intricate and geometric, resembling the veins of leaves. A small hearth burned in the center, its flames casting dancing shadows that made the hut feel less like a dwelling and more like a temple. Marcus, trained to scan every detail of a room for tactical advantage, found himself unsettled by how little of it made sense. "This place," he muttered, pulling off his gloves, "doesn't feel like it belongs to just one person." Alana smiled as she set the wicker basket on a low table. "It belongs to the jungle Captain Steele. I only borrow it for a time." Marcus sat where she gestured, a plain wooden chair, sturdy yet oddly shaped, the seat sloping so that one instinctively leaned back in repose. He adjusted uneasily, preferring to remain alert. "You must have been here a long time." "Longer than most of your people have been alive," she said lightly, though the comment drew a crease to his brow. She moved with a grace that contradicted her apparent frailty. Despite the stiffness she had shown on the trail, she now glided from shelf to hearth, placing herbs into a clay pot with steady hands. She added water from a gourd and set it above the fire. Soon steam coiled upward, carrying a scent that prickled Marcus's nerves with equal parts comfort and unease. "Tea," she explained. "It will settle your body after the heat of the jungle." Marcus accepted the steaming cup she offered, though he set it on his knee rather than drink. The soldier in him refused to trust anything untested. His eyes followed her as she moved about the hut, noting something strange. The stiffness in her gait was gone. Her steps were smoother, her posture taller. "You seem stronger," he observed. "Perhaps I am," she said with an enigmatic tilt of her head. The last rays of Proxima's twin suns slipped through the narrow window. They touched her face as she turned, illuminating her features. Marcus blinked. For an instant, he thought he was hallucinating again. The wrinkles at the corners of her eyes seemed to fade, the silver strands of her hair shimmering until they glowed like threads of starlight. Her skin, still radiant blue, smoothed into a youthful sheen. He nearly spilled the tea as he lurched to his feet. What the hell? Alana faced him fully, her lips curving into a smile, far too knowing for an old woman. The transformation quickened like watching decades fall away in seconds. Her posture straightened until he stood, tall, statuesque, her linen dress clinging to a form that was anything but frail. When the light dimmed, the figure before him bore no resemblance to a grandmother. She was a woman in the prime of her life, breathtaking in both beauty and presence. "Do not be alarmed, Captain," she said, her voice richer now, carrying the resonance of something ancient. "The jungle reveals truth at sunset." Marcus's hand flew instinctively to his holster. His training screamed threat. You tricked me." Ilana laughed, and the sound was crystalline like wind chimes stirred by a playful breeze. "Not tricked, tested. Few would aid a young woman wandering the jungle alone. Many would try to use me, but an old grandmother that invites compassion. And you passed." Marcus's frown deepened. "You could have gotten me killed. I thought you were..." "Helpless," she supplied with a mischievous lift of her brow. She stepped closer, and Marcus found himself backing up until his calves hit the chair. "Compassion without expectation of reward is rare in any species. That is why I showed you the mask first, and why I reveal myself now." Outside, the jungle song deepened with nightfall. Strange calls echoed beyond the hut walls. Predators, awakening wings brushing the canopy, unseen eyes glittering in the shadows. Marcus glanced toward the door, calculating whether he could still make a run for it. But instinct told him he would never survive. Not out there. Not without this woman, this being beside him. "It's too dangerous to leave now," Alana said, reading the thought on his face. "The night hunters are already circling." "Stay, Captain, at least until dawn." Marcus exhaled through his nose, fighting the tension in his chest. He was trapped, but not entirely unwilling. Something in her presence unsettled him in ways no battlefield ever had. "I'll leave at first light," he said finally. "My friend doesn't have time to wait." Her eyes softened, though they glittered with something he couldn't name. "Of course. But tonight perhaps you will accept my hospitality." The way she spoke the word made his mouth go dry. He sat slowly, forcing his hands to still. She poured the tea into a second cup and sat beside him on a woven bench. For a time, the only sound was the low crackle of fire and the endless chorus of jungle life outside. "So what are you really?" Marcus asked at last. "I've seen shapeshifters before, but nothing like this." Alana sipped her tea, then set it aside. "I am many things to many beings. To the jungle, a caretaker. To the indigenous, a healer. To predators, a deterrent. To you." She leaned closer, and Marcus caught the scent of something intoxicating, equal parts floral and electric, like air before lightning. "To you I am still becoming." "That's not an answer," he said hoarsely. "It's an invitation," she countered, her lips curving. Marcus swallowed hard. His instincts screamed danger, yet he remained seated. He'd faced plasma fire knife duels in trenches, ambushes by enemies twice his size. Yet never had he felt so completely disarmed. When she rose and moved to the hearth, her silhouette against the firelight was fluid, hypnotic. No trace remained of the frail woman he had guided through the undergrowths. Instead, each movement radiated deliberate grace, like a dance meant for an audience of one. Marcus found his hand drifting toward the cup on his knee. He raised it, inhaled the steam. Spices, sweetness, something foreign but oddly alluring. Against his better judgment, he drank. Heat rushed through him, not unpleasant, but consuming, as though the jungle's breath itself flowed into his veins. The walls of the hut seemed sharper, brighter. The woven mats glowed faintly. The fire crackled in colors he'd never seen before. He set the cup down, slowly aware that every sense was amplifying. Ilana returned, her eyes fixed on his with almost predatory focus. "You feel it, don't you?" Marcus nodded reluctantly. "What did you put in that?" "Nothing unnatural," she said softly. "Only what the jungle already provides. It opens you to possibilities." Her voice lingered in his chest like a vibration. He wanted to push back, demand clarity, but his body betrayed him, leaning forward as though drawn by unseen strings. Ilana smiled again, but this time it was softer, carrying both warmth and mystery. She reached out her fingers, hovering near his before brushing against the back of his hand. Sparks seemed to leap between their skin. Marcus sucked in a sharp breath. The last barrier of reason in his mind began to fray. The soldier in him wanted answers, wanted certainty, wanted to classify her as ally or enemy. But another part deeper, more human, recognized the truth he didn't dare name aloud. Whatever she was, he was already entangled. And the night had only just begun. The jungle's night symphony pressed against the hut like a living tide. Deep-throated howls reverberated from the undergrowth, countered by the rhythmic chirr of unseen insects. Every so often, Marcus swore he heard heavy bodies moving through the brush, predators circling patient and silent. Yet within the hut's walls, the atmosphere was cocooned, warm-charged, and strangely intimate. Ilana moved with unhurried grace, preparing a meal from bundles of herbs and cuts of some unknown game. The firelight kissed her skin, highlighting every curve, every motion. Marcus sat rigid on the woven bench, his soldier's instincts gnashing against the rising tide of sensations he couldn't explain. When she handed him a bowl, steam curling upward, he hesitated. The stew was thick-colored in shades of crimson and gold, the aroma sharp yet sweet, almost intoxicating. His hunger betrayed him before suspicion could take hold. He scooped a bite into his mouth. The taste detonated on his tongue. Sweetness collided with spice sharpness, with richness, layers unfolding with each chew until he felt as though the very fabric of his senses had widened. He blinked rapidly, aware that the walls seemed to shimmer with faint colors, greens and blues, normally invisible to the human eye. "What? What is this?" he asked, voice hoarse. Ilana's lips curved knowingly. "Life, distilled. The essence of the jungle, gathered and gifted." He swallowed heat blooming in his chest. Each bite filled him with strange vigor, as though his muscles drew strength not just from calories, but from some deeper, primal source. He set the bowl down carefully, hands trembling. "This isn't natural," he murmured. "It is as natural as breathing," she countered. "You simply have not been taught to recognize it." Her eyes locked on his, impossibly bright, drawing him in. "Do you feel it, Captain Steele? The way the world hums at the edge of your senses, the way every heartbeat echoes beyond your body." He wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. He felt the thrum of something vast and alive pressing against his awareness, begging to be acknowledged. "Why me?" he whispered, more to himself than to her. Ilana set her bowl aside and stood, her movements flowing like water. She approached him slowly, deliberately, until she stood close enough that he could smell her, floral and electric with the faint ozone bite of a storm. She reached out her hand, hovering near his cheek, but not yet touching. "Because you came to me without desire," she said softly. "You helped a frail woman in the jungle, not for power, not for gain, but simply because it was right. Such compassion burns brightly in your kind, and yet so few of you listen to it." Marcus swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. "You're saying this is some kind of test?" Her smile deepened, and then her fingers touched his jawline. The moment of contact was like a spark through dry tinder. Heat coursed across his skin, not painful but overwhelming. His breath hitched. "This," she whispered, "is a gift." Her lips brushed his before he could react. The kiss seared through him, a current of fire and lightning. His vision fractured into 1,000 colors, every nerve igniting at once. He gasped, clutching her shoulders, and the world broke open. It wasn't just a kiss. It was an invasion, an expansion, an unlocking. His consciousness spilled outward beyond the hut, beyond his body. He felt the jungle, the trees stretching their roots deep into hidden aquifers, the nocturnal predators stalking with muscles coiled, the insects humming in perfect synchrony. He could sense the jungle breathing aware alive. Marcus staggered back, tearing his lips from hers. What's happening to me? Ilana's eyes glowed with inner light. I am showing you what I see, what I am, and what you can be. He shook his head, struggling to control the rising tide of sensation. This isn't possible. Her laughter was soft, almost pitying. Possible is a word humans wield to protect themselves from wonder. Tell me, Captain, did you feel it? The pulse beneath your feet, the heartbeat of this world. He couldn't answer. His chest heaved, every breath carrying the weight of something too vast to comprehend. Ilana stepped closer again, her body brushing against his. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Let me guide you. Let me show you how to dance with the universe. This time when she kissed him, Marcus didn't resist. The world dissolved into light and sensation. Their bodies pressed together, but what passed between them was more than physical. Every touch carried meaning, every shared breath carried essence. Marcus felt as though he were both inside himself and far beyond each heartbeat, tethering him to her and to the jungle around them. Through their union, he glimpsed fragments of her existence, centuries spent wandering the canopy, guiding its evolution, defending it from those who would exploit it. He felt her joy in small beauties, her grief in centuries of solitude, and she in turn drank in his memories, camaraderie forged in battle, the awe of his first spacewalk, the wounds left by losses, the unyielding determination that had carried him this far. Time became meaningless. Pleasure and revelation intertwined until Marcus could no longer tell where he ended and Ilana began. At last, they collapsed together on the woven mats, their breaths ragged, their bodies slick with sweat. Marcus felt utterly drained, yet at the same time more alive than he had ever been. Every cell in his body hummed his veins, vibrating with unseen energy. He stirred faintly, murmuring into the curve of her shoulder. I never imagined anything like that. Ilana's fingers traced idle patterns across his chest. Each touch left trails of tingling warmth. Humans burn so brightly, she whispered. You feel so deeply. It is why I was drawn to you, Marcus Steele. He managed a weak chuckle. And here I thought it was because I carried your fruit basket. Her laughter rippled through him, sweet and mischievous. That too. Sleep pressed heavy on his eyelids, but before he surrendered to it, he noticed something. Just over his heart, glowing faintly, was a new mark. It looked like a stylized tree, its branches reaching upward, its roots stretching down. The lines shimmered in iridescent patterns, shifting whenever he tried to focus directly on them. What is this? He asked, lifting a trembling hand to touch it. The mark warmed beneath his fingertips, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. A bond, Ilana murmured, eyes half-lidded with contentment. The jungle flows through me, and now through you. You are marked as one who belongs. Her words blurred as exhaustion finally overtook him. His last conscious thought before darkness claimed him was not fear, but a strange certainty. His life had just changed in ways he could not yet begin to understand. And for the first time in years, Captain Marcus Steele drifted into sleep, not with the vigilance of a soldier, but with the vulnerable surrender of someone who had been utterly remade. Marcus awoke to silence. For a moment, he couldn't tell if he was still dreaming. The woven mat beneath him was warm, but the place beside him was empty. Sunlight streamed through the narrow window, painting golden streaks across the hut's interior. The sense of spice and smoke from the night before lingered, faint but unmistakable. He blinked, his body sore in ways both familiar and utterly foreign, a bone-deep ache that carried with it the afterglow of revelation. Ilana, he called softly, voice rough with sleep. Only the jungle answered distant calls of avian creatures, the rustle of unseen animals through underbrush, the low hum of insects rising with the day. He sat up slowly, muscles protesting, and rubbed a hand across his face. Every memory from the night before surged back with startling clarity. The kiss, the union, the jungle's voice in his head. His gaze fell on the woven pillow where she had lain. Resting there was a flower. Not just any flower. The Proximum lotus. Its silvery petals shimmered with an inner light, perfect and unblemished, more radiant than any specimen he had seen in the database. Marcus's chest tightened. She gave it to me. He reached for it, reverently cradling the bloom in his hand. Gratitude welled up in him, tangled with confusion and a sharp ache of longing. He wanted her still beside him, wanted answers, wanted more of whatever they had shared, but she was gone. As he set the flower into a specimen container from his pack, movement caught his eye. He froze. On his bare chest, just over his heart, the mark glowed faintly. A stylized tree, its branches and roots etched into his skin, shimmering iridescently when the light struck it. It wasn't raised like a brand, nor inked like a tattoo. It was part of him, as though the skin itself had woven new patterns. "What the hell?" he murmured, tracing it with his fingertips. The moment he touched it, warmth spread outward, a pulse that matched his heartbeat. His breath caught. Rising to his feet, Marcus realized the jungle outside no longer looked the same. When he stepped from the hut into the clearing, the entire world seemed alive. Colors were sharper, more vivid. Leaves shimmered with hues he had never noticed, each vein glowing faintly with vitality. Sounds carried layers, the chatter of creatures above the subtle groan of tree trunks, expanding in the sunlight, even the distant trickle of hidden streams beneath the ground. He could sense it all, not as a flood of information, but as an extension of himself. "This isn't possible," he whispered. Yet deep down, he knew it was real. The mark on his chest hummed with quiet certainty. But there was no time to linger. Krell's life was still hanging by a thread. Marcus dressed quickly, securing the lotus in his pack, and set out. The journey back to the outpost should have taken hours. Yesterday, it had drained him nearly to exhaustion. Today, he moved with uncanny ease. Where branches had clawed at him before, they now seemed apart. Roots that had tripped him shifted subtly aside. Even patches of treacherous ground announced themselves in his awareness, warning him to step lightly. It was as though the jungle itself was guiding him. Marcus moved swiftly, almost effortlessly. Energy coursed through him, not the adrenaline of combat, but something steadier, deeper. His lungs filled with air that tasted cleaner, richer. When he finally caught sight of the perimeter fence, less than an hour had passed. He stopped briefly, trying to school his features. What am I going to tell them? He doubted anyone at the outpost would believe the truth. Hell, he barely believed it himself. The guard at the gate spotted him and straightened sharply. "Captain Steele, we were about to send a search party. Dr. Linden said your friend's condition is critical." "I got delayed," Marcus said gruffly, lifting the specimen container. "But I found what we need." He forced his voice into the clipped cadence of command, suppressing the tremor in his chest. The medical bay was chaos. Linden hovered over Krell's prone form, her hands flying across instruments. The alien's gray-green skin was ashen, his breathing shallow, his powerful frame shrunken, as though already half consumed by death. "Thank God," Linden said when Marcus strode in. "He doesn't have much time." Marcus moved to Krell's side, gripping the alien's three-fingered hand. "Hang on, buddy. I didn't trek through hell to lose you now." Linden hurriedly processed the lotus, her eyes widening as she examined it. "This specimen is extraordinary. I've never seen such biochemical density." She prepared an injection, then administered it carefully into Krell's bloodstream. Marcus exhaled in relief. But as he kept his hand on Krell's arm, something unexpected happened. The mark on his chest burned warm, then hot. He felt a pull, an instinct. Before he realized what he was doing, he placed his other hand over the wound where the venom had spread. Energy surged down his arm. Subtle, gentle, yet undeniable. A warmth passed into Krell's body, not like fire, but like sunlight pouring into frozen soil. Linden gasped, "Captain, what are you?" She cut herself off as the monitor spiked. Krell's vitals stabilized, then began improving at a pace no medicine could explain. His breathing deepened, his color returned. Within minutes, his eyes fluttered open. "Marcus," Krell croaked weakly, blinking up at him. Then a faint grin spread across his alien features. "Did you fight a jungle cat? You look terrible." A laugh burst from Marcus, half relief, half disbelief. "Something like that. How do you feel?" "Like I could eat an entire quill back," Krell rasped, trying to sit up. "Not so fast," Linden warned, pushing him gently back down. She turned her gaze sharply on Marcus. That was impossible. The lotus couldn't have acted that fast." "What did you do?" Marcus withdrew his hand quickly, hiding the mark beneath his uniform. "Must have been a good batch," he said, voice rough. But Linden wasn't convinced. Her eyes narrowed, flicking to his chest where the faint glow still pulsed beneath fabric. "Captain, I'll file my report later," Marcus interrupted, stepping back. "Right now, Krell needs rest." Before she could press further, he turned and left the medical bay, pulse racing. Alone in the washroom, Marcus stripped his shirt and stared into the mirror. The mark pulsed faintly with bluish light, the exact shade of Alana's skin. Veins around it glowed subtly, threads of color tracing patterns beneath his flesh. "What did you do to me?" he whispered. As if in answer, a whisper brushed the edges of his mind. Not sound, not exactly, but presence. A gift freely given must be freely used. Marcus shivered, gripping the sink. He splashed cold water on his face, but when he looked up again, the glow hadn't faded. Something fundamental had changed inside him. And though part of him wanted to fear it, another part, the soldier who had seen death too many times, recognized the truth. This was not a curse. This was power. And power always came with consequences. That night, as Marcus tried to rest, he could not sleep. Dreams tugged at him, whispers of leaves, flashes of blue eyes, the press of Alana's lips against his. He awoke drenched in sweat, the mark on his chest, pulsing in rhythm with his racing heartbeat. When he finally calmed enough to breathe, he knew one thing with certainty. He had to return to her. The jungle had been restless all morning. Marcus noticed it the moment he stepped beyond the outpost fence for his routine perimeter check. Leaves trembled, though no wind stirred them. Birds abandoned their nests in flurries of alarm. Even the insects, normally a deafening chorus, had fallen into uneasy silence. He adjusted the strap of his rifle across his shoulder, instincts prickling. Something was wrong. The mark on his chest burned faintly, a steady thrum that seemed to echo in the soil beneath his boots. He stopped, crouched, and pressed a hand to the earth. Immediately, a shiver of sensation rippled up his arm. The jungle was in pain. Marcus's jaw tightened. He followed the sensation, weaving through twisted trunks until the undergrowth thinned into a small clearing. That's where he saw them. 3 alien figures moved with mechanical precision, insectoid bodies gleaming dully in filtered sunlight. Their exoskeletons were segmented chitin plates etched with strange glyphs. Multi-jointed limbs worked specialized tools that extracted sap-sheared plants and stored the samples in canisters strapped to their thoraxes. Vorn. Marcus's blood ran cold. He'd fought their kind before at the edges of disputed systems. Expansionists, harvesters, stripping resources from worlds until nothing remained. He hadn't expected to see them here, not this deep into Proxima's jungle. One Vorn bent over a flowering bush, scanning it with a device that chirped ominously. High concentrations of compound P37, it clicked in its strange, chittering tongue. Harvester will want this sector stripped. Another tapped its mandibles. Confirmed. Ecosystem rich in bioactive compounds. Matriarch will be pleased. Marcus's fists clenched. Not here, not this world. He shifted, but a sudden wave of anguish stopped him. The tree beside him quivered, leaves shriveling as a Vorn jabbed into its bark for a core sample. Marcus could feel the agony radiating through his new connection. He pressed his palm to the trunk. "I feel you," he whispered. "I'll stop them." The mark on his chest flared hot. His awareness exploded outward, mapping every living thing within 100 meters. The insects hiding in roots, the birds crouched in branches, and deeper still, a presence watching him. Familiar, powerful. Alana, he thought instinctively. And she answered. Not with words, but impressions, rage, protectiveness, the fierce fury of the jungle itself. They wound what is mine, what is ours. Marcus's resolve hardened, but his motion had not gone unnoticed. One Vorn froze, antennae twitching. Energy anomaly detected, it chittered. Unidentified biosignature. The others turned toward the deeper jungle, triangulating. They weren't scanning Marcus, they were scanning Elena. "Damn it," Marcus hissed. Without hesitation, he broke cover, stepping into the clearing with his rifle raised. "Hey, bug boys!" His voice rang sharp in the still air. "You're trespassing on protected territory. Pack up and leave before I call in an airstrike." The Vorn froze, assessing him with cold alien eyes. The lead one clicked disdainfully. Human soldier alone. No threat. Marcus smirked, though his pulse pounded. "Want to bet?" The mark pulsed again. On instinct, he slammed his free hand against the soil. Energy surged through him, and suddenly vines erupted from the ground, coiling around the Vorn's limbs. They screeched in alarm, slashing at the vegetation with serrated appendages, but for every vine severed, three more grew. Marcus stared at his own hands, half terrified, half awed. Did I just? Last warning, he growled, masking his shock with bravado. Leave this planet, or die here. The lead Vorn tore free, one limb leveling a weapon at him. Its mandibles clicked. Specimen acquired. Eliminate anomaly. Before it could fire, a blinding flash erupted behind Marcus. Blue light engulfed the clearing, solidifying into translucent resin that froze the Vorn in place like insects trapped in amber. Marcus spun around. She was there. Ilona. But not the frail old woman he had first met. Not even the radiant woman from their night together. She stood radiant, luminous, her blue skin blazing with inner power. Eyes like twin suns. Energy coiled around her fingers, shimmering threads that bound the resin tighter. You came back, she said simply, voice carrying the weight of centuries. You knew I would, Marcus replied, lowering his weapon. She stepped closer, eyes narrowing at the immobilized Vorn. They are merely the first wave. More will come. For what Marcus demanded. Her gaze met his, and in that moment he felt her truth ripple through his mind. For me, and for what now flows through you. The words chilled him, because of the bond. Ilona nodded gravely. Then she touched his chest where the mark pulsed. The warmth of her hand sent a jolt racing through him. You are no longer only human Marcus Steele. You are Terra Vita's champion, my champion. Marcus's throat tightened. Terra Vita. The name the ancients gave to my kind, she explained. Her voice was steady, but tinged with sorrow. Guardians born when the first roots of a world sank into soil. We embody the soul of living ecosystems. I am Proxima, its caretaker, its protector. He staggered back a step, trying to process. You're saying you're the spirit of this entire planet, not spirit. Flesh and essence intertwined, bound to it as you are bound to your body. When the jungle suffers, I suffer. When it thrives, I thrive. Marcus remembered the agony he had felt when the Vorn cut into the tree. That's why I felt it, through the mark. Her hand lingered against his chest. Yes, I shared my essence with you, something I have done only 5 times in 10,000 years. Why me? His voice was raw, caught between awe and disbelief. Her eyes softened, almost tender. Because you chose compassion. Because humans adapt. Where other species fracture under foreign essence, yours weaves with it, evolving into something new. He swallowed. So what am I now? Her lips curved faintly. A bridge. Neither fully human nor Terra Vita, but something between. Something that has never existed. Before he could respond, a tremor rippled through the earth. Both turned toward the horizon. From the sky, a greenish haze descended, spreading across the jungle canopy. Where it touched trees blackened and collapsed leaves shriveling into ash. Ilona staggered, her luminous form flickering. Marcus caught her by the arm. What's happening? They unleash a toxin, she gasped, designed to sever my bond to this world. As the jungle dies, so do I. Marcus's stomach clenched. He had seen chemical warfare before, but this was worse. This wasn't just targeting an army, it was aimed at the soul of a planet. He tightened his grip on her shoulders. Then we fight. Together. Ilona's eyes flared, locking on his. Yes, but know this, Marcus Steele, once you take this path, you can never go back. The mark will consume you, shape you, until you are no longer entirely human. He met her gaze without flinching. I wasn't planning to live forever as just a soldier anyway. For the first time, her lips curved into something more than mystery, a true smile, radiant and fierce. Then you are ready. The jungle around them trembled, a chorus of voices, rising in unison, as if acknowledging his choice. And in that moment, Marcus knew the war for Proxima had only just begun. The alarm klaxons wailed across the human outpost as Marcus and Ilona burst through the tree line. Vorn shuttles screamed overhead like predatory birds, their black smoke trails clawing across the skies. Security officers scrambled to defensive positions, rifles trained upward. The perimeter fence crackled with emergency power surges, already buckling under strafing fire. Commander Holt met Marcus at the gate jaw, set beneath his salt and pepper crew cut. His eyes flicked from Marcus's glowing blue eyes to the radiant woman at his side. He swallowed his surprise quickly. Captain Steele, you've got a hell of a lot of explaining to do, and who the hell is this? Marcus opened his mouth, but Alana's voice cut through calm and resonant. I am the reason your enemies are here, and your best hope of stopping them. Gasps rippled among the soldiers. Holt's hand hovered near his sidearm. Explain, fast. But before Marcus could, a security officer sprinted up, breathless. Servorn mothership deploying atmospheric dispersal pattern. All eyes turned skyward. A green cloud billowed downward from the massive vessel, spreading like a plague. The first touch of it hit the jungle canopy at the horizon, and trees collapsed in seconds, blackening as though decades of rot consumed them in a breath. Marcus felt the agony through the mark, doubling him over. Alana staggered beside him, her disguise flickering. For an instant, her frail grandmother form dissolved, revealing the luminous demigoddess writhing in pain. They're killing her, Marcus gasped. Killing the jungle. Dr. Linden's scanner shrieked. The toxin is devastating plant life. If it spreads, the colony's air filters won't hold. We'd have to evacuate, and there aren't enough ships. Holt cursed under his breath. He turned to Marcus, desperation plain. Tell me you've got a plan, Captain. Marcus straightened, meeting Elena's glowing eyes. She was fading, her power bleeding into the ground. But when her gaze locked on his, something passed between them, a decision already made. We fight, Marcus said simply, but not like soldiers, like guardians. Holt frowned. What does that even mean? Alana's hand slid over Marcus's chest, pressing against the mark. It means surrender to what he is becoming. Her voice was steady despite the toxin's toll. Together we can transform poison into life, but only if he accepts my essence fully. No hesitation. Marcus's throat tightened. He understood what she meant. This would not be like their first union. This would be deeper, permanent. He would not walk away unchanged. He glanced toward Krell, who stood pale but steady among the soldiers. His friend gave a single nod, eyes hard. Do it. Marcus exhaled slowly. All right, tell me what I need to do. Come with me. They ran across the compound to the botanical dome, the largest collection of flora within the outpost. The air inside was hot, humid, heavy with the scent of green life. Plants pressed against the transparent panels, trembling, as if sensing the toxin approaching. Ilana guided Marcus to the pool at the dome's heart, a mirror of still water ringed by luminous vines. Already the edges of the pool quivered, touched by the creeping death from outside. This place amplifies the bond, she said, stepping close. Her hands framed his face, her eyes glowing like suns. No walls, no holding back. You must let me in completely. Marcus's pulse thundered, and if I can, her lips curved faintly tender and fierce at once. Then both of us die, along with this world. There was no room for hesitation. Marcus nodded once, then pressed his forehead to hers. The mark on his chest erupted in light. The bond ignited like a star going supernova. Marcus's consciousness exploded outward, no longer tethered to just flesh and bone. He was the jungle. Roots threaded through his veins, leaves unfurled in his lungs, rivers pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. Every creature, every tree, every grain of soil sang in his awareness. The toxins spread like veins of sickly green fire, tearing holes in that song. But Marcus's hybrid body processed it, absorbing the poison, reshaping it into something new. He gasped at the pain searing bone deep, but Alana was there, her essence flowing into him, carrying the joy of healing, the ecstasy of creation. We are one now, her thought brushed his. You are not alone. He bore down, pulling the toxin into himself. Agony ripped through his chest, but with every pulse of pain came a counterpoint of pleasure, the wild, overwhelming joy of giving life back. The jungle responded, leaves flushing, green flowers blooming even as blackened trunks revived. Outside the dome, soldiers watched in awe as a wave of blue-green light rippled outward from the structure, sweeping across the dying canopy. Wherever it passed, the poison withered, replaced by vibrant growth. But the Vorn were not blind. The mothership adjusted its focus beams, lancing down to strike the dome. Yellow light pierced the transparent panels, wrapping Marcus and Alana in a spear of energy. Within the bond, Marcus felt Alana scream, her essence being pulled upward, torn from him. "They're extracting me," she cried, her luminous form flickering. Marcus gritted his teeth. "I won't let them take you." He tried to anchor her, but the beam was designed for this, crafted to harvest Theravada essence. She was slipping. Desperation ignited something new inside him. Instead of resisting, he surrendered to the beam, letting it pull, letting it draw him upward alongside her essence. But he didn't sever the bond, he rode it. Elona's thoughts surged with alarm. "What are you doing?" "Something human," Marcus growled. His consciousness followed the beam into the mothership itself, threading into its alien systems. What the Vorn hadn't predicted, could never have predicted, was that in merging with Elona, Marcus had become something they couldn't classify. Part human, part Theravada, uniquely capable of bridging organic and mechanical. Inside their systems, he saw everything their plan to replicate Elona's essence, to create weapons that could control ecosystems across galaxies. Worlds bent to their will, stripped bare. He felt their arrogance, their certainty. Rage burned hot and bright. "Not this world. Not her." Elona's voice steadied him. "Then take what you need. I trust you." Their bond deepened beyond anything physical, beyond even consciousness. They were one. Power surged. Patterns of blue light spread across Marcus's body, etched like living tattoos mirroring the branching networks of Proxima's life. His eyes blazed azure fire. "Enough," he said, voice resonant with both human grit and divine force. With a gesture, he reversed the beam. The yellow light turned blue-green, channeling not extraction, but infusion. Life energy poured upward into the mothership, overloading its organic circuitry. Systems sputtered, failing one by one. The Vorn matriarch shrieked in her command chamber. "Impossible." "What are you?" Marcus's glowing avatar appeared before her, towering radiant. His voice shook the chamber. "I am what happens when humanity meets divinity as equals. I am compassion wielding power. This world is protected." The matriarch staggered, mandibles clacking in fury. "No." Marcus unleashed the bond, not as a weapon of destruction, but as a tide of renewal. Vorn systems collapsed, their weapons neutralized, their propulsion dead. The mothership hung powerless in orbit, stripped of dominance. Back in the dome, Marcus's physical body collapsed. Elona caught him, cradling him in arms that glowed with gratitude. Her lips brushed his ear as she whispered, "You did it. We did it." He opened his eyes weakly. They burned permanent blue, now twin mirrors of hers. Patterns of light glowed faintly across his chest and arms. "We found a third path. Together." Outside, the jungle roared with rebirth. Flowers erupted in riotous color vines, unfurled in waves. Trees rose taller than ever. Soldiers lowered their weapons, all plain on every face. The toxin scar vanished beneath a flood of green life. The Vorn ground troops, cut off from command, panicked and retreated. Their great mothership, once a symbol of conquest, drifted impotent in the sky like a carcass awaiting scavengers. For the first time in centuries, Proxima was safe. Marcus stood shakily, Elena's arms steadying him. Commander Holt approached cautiously, eyes flicking over Marcus's transformed body. "My God, what happened to you, Captain?" Marcus straightened, voice steady despite exhaustion. "Evolution." Dr. Linden scanned him, her device whirring uncontrollably. "Your DNA, it's completely restructured. Human baseline, but integrated with, I don't even have words." Marcus met Alana's gaze, feeling the bond hum between them. "I wouldn't change it back, even if I could." Holt studied him for a long, tense moment, then finally nodded. "Then I suppose I have a new kind of soldier on my roster." He turned to his men. "Stand down. We're alive thanks to them." Marcus exhaled relief coursing through him. He looked to the jungle beyond the dome, now vibrant and alive. For the first time since he had set foot on this world, he felt not like an outsider, but like part of it. Part of her. And he knew this battle was only the beginning. 3 months later, Proxima was no longer the same world Marcus had first marched into. The jungles had rebounded with breathtaking speed, surging with new growth that shimmered faintly at night. Bioluminescent vines twined across the colony perimeter, not as a threat, but as a protective embrace. Where the toxin had left black scars, now forests towered higher and stronger, pulsing with the quiet hum of renewal. And at the heart of it all was Marcus Steele. He stood at the edge of the newly built diplomatic zone, gazing across gardens that blended human engineering with Proxima's living essence. Pathways of polished stone wound between luminous trees, their branches forming natural arches overhead. Alien creatures moved freely, unafraid of the humans who now shared their space. It was a miracle, some said. But Marcus knew it was more than that. It was a choice. Ambassador Steele, a rumbling voice called. Marcus turned smiling as Krell approached in his freshly polished security armor. His friend looked stronger than ever, his near death from the venom now nothing but a memory. "They're ready," Krell said, gesturing toward the central pavilion. "The indigenous delegation waits." Marcus exhaled, rolling his shoulders. The patterns etched across his skin glowed faintly, even in daylight no longer something he could hide. His eyes reflected blue fire whenever the light caught them. He wasn't just Captain Steele anymore. He was something more, something new. And Alana no Proxima itself walked beside him. She shimmered into being at his side, choosing her radiant form rather than the frail disguise. Her luminous skin caught the sunlight, and the vines nearest to her bloomed instantly, responding to her presence. "Contemplating your role," again she teased, her voice warm. Marcus smirked, just appreciating what we built. Her hand slipped into his. The patterns across his chest flared softly in response to her touch. "The jungle thrives as never before," she said. "Your human perspective has shown me possibilities I never considered in 10,000 years. And you've shown me that humanity isn't alone," Marcus replied quietly. "That maybe our fire isn't just about destruction. Maybe it's about renewal." Her lips curved in amusement. Among other gifts, she teased, brushing against him with deliberate intimacy. He chuckled, shaking his head. Even after everything, she could still disarm him with a single look. The pavilion buzzed with anticipation. Representatives of the colony, indigenous Proximans, and even delegates from nearby systems had gathered. Today was more than a treaty signing. It was a declaration humans and Guardians could coexist not as master and resource, but as partners. Krell's voice echoed from behind. "Ambassador Steele, the delegation awaits." Marcus glanced at Elena. She shimmered briefly into her grandmotherly form, then back into her luminous self. "Is that necessary?" Marcus murmured. Her laughter was like crystal bells. "Your attraction to the younger form would be difficult to explain to your companions." Heat rose in his face. "That obvious. Your thoughts practically shout it," she teased, eyes sparkling. "Later, when we're alone again." Before Marcus could retort, they stepped into the pavilion. Gas rippled through the crowd. Soldiers stiffened. Scientists fumbled for scanners, and the indigenous delegation bowed deeply. At the center, Commander Holt stood, his military discipline ironclad, but his eyes betraying awe. "Ladies and gentlemen," Holt began, his voice steady, "we gather here not just as survivors of an attack, but as witnesses to something unprecedented. Today we recognize that the future of Proxima cannot be defended by walls and weapons alone." He gestured to Marcus and Alana. "It will be forged through trust and through bonds that transcend species." The indigenous elder stepped forward, his voice a low chant. "The Terravita has chosen a human. The fire and the root are joined. We honor this." Marcus cleared his throat, stepping forward. "I'm no saint. I didn't ask for this. But when I saw injustice, when I saw someone who needed help, I made a choice. And that choice changed me. Humanity's strength isn't in conquering worlds. It's in connection, in loyalty, in standing by our friends even when they're nothing like us." His voice carried firm and clear. "The Vorin thought they could harvest life itself. They thought power meant domination. But we proved them wrong. Power is nothing without compassion. That's the lesson humanity brings to the stars." The pavilion erupted in applause from soldiers to scientists to indigenous alike. Even Holt nodded approvingly, though he muttered, "Hell of a speech for a grunt." Ilana's hand tightened around Marcus's. Her eyes shone with something deeper than pride. Later, as the sun dipped behind Proxima's twin horizons, Marcus stood with Ilana overlooking the gardens. The treaty was signed, the alliance forged. For the first time, hope stretched beyond survival. It promised a future. Yet Marcus felt the weight of something larger pressing at the edges of his awareness. The bond gave him glimpses, whispers of distant worlds, ecosystems crying out under exploitation, echoes of Terravita across the galaxy long silenced by the Vorin. "They won't stop," he murmured. Ilona's expression was solemn. "No, the Vorin tasted failure here, but they will regroup, and they are not the only threat. There are darker hungers in the void. Marcus clenched his fists, feeling the patterns across his skin thrum with resolve. Then we'll be ready. Her gaze softened. He looked at her, feeling the bond hum like a living thing between them. I didn't just save this world. I found something worth fighting for. Someone worth fighting with. Her laughter was gentle, carrying millennia of loneliness now eased. And I at last found a partner worthy of sharing this burden. A partner worthy of me. They stood in silence as the stars emerged above. The jungle whispered in his mind, alive and aware. The patterns on his skin glowed in rhythm with Alana's pulse. He wasn't just Captain Steele anymore. Not just human, not just Terra Vita. He was something new. A bridge, a protector, a champion. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming.